This conference will now be recorded.
All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to the September 17th meeting of the PDC. First off, I'd like to start with just a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for all that attending. We would all like to welcome Miss Sarah back. Miss Sarah Carter is back joining us today. Give us a wave, Miss Sarah.
You're here.
So, all right. Next item is the approval of the July 16th minutes. Has everybody had time to review them? If so, and no corrections or anything, may I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, Frank,
I got it.
to approve the minutes.
All right, and it's second by
Megan.
Mr. Rogers and second by Megan. All those opposed, say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Next is a financial update. Ms. Rosalie.
Thank you. It's attachment 3 on page 1, just, I guess, items to highlight. In the employer health insurance line for July, that looks really high of the 17,256, but we contribute $1,700 for 5 individuals who are in the high deductible plan. So this goes into their health savings account. So the one-time contribution for those folks who are paying the lower interest, the lower premium. And that's really all there is on page 1. On page 2, under the FY21 budget, we did add $134,000 for the CVCC CTE that we talked about at the last meeting. So we put that on our budget. And I guess a highlight for page 3, down towards the bottom under funding from fund balance in the June column, the June 30, 20. This is how we ended up the year. We knew we were going to be short of budget, and it was several reasons. There was some funding that we didn't receive from, we weren't able to bill out everything for DRPT and Ride Solutions. And so that is where we ended up the year. I don't know if y'all had seen the final number. So unless anyone had any particular questions on anything.
And one follow-up note is whenever we don't bill out all of those VDOT or VDRPT, we bill them out in the next year. So that $11,000 that was short in FY20 is captured in FY21.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to bill it out this year. Right. So.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Ms. Rosalie? Okay, there being none, we will move on. Mr. Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have had a bylaws amendment on our agenda for several months now, looking for 12 members in order to consider it because our bylaws cannot be amended except when a majority of the 23 member or 22 member planning district commission are present and voting for it. Well, today we have 11 attending, so we're getting closer, but we're not there at the 12 yet. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, let's just table it and move on to the next item.
Yes, sir. Next item, discussion of unmet needs.
This is an
Proceed.
appropriate, thank you. This is an appropriate time to share with each other and among ourselves what kind of issues you're facing in your locality, particularly related to COVID, the economic impact. We Well, here's Mr. Connor. Welcome. We do have 12 now. If you want to revisit the previous agenda item, Mr. Mayor, we'll take 12 voting for in order to pass it, but we do have 12 people on the call now.
Okay, let's you finish up what you're doing now. We'll come back to it.
Okay,
Hey,
thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, just in the interest of saving time on that discussion, if we'd have to have a unanimous vote to pass it, and I already know I'm a no, I don't know that we want to spend a lot of time on it. I don't mean to be offensive, but just in the interest of everybody's time.
Thank you. What I was hoping for in this particular agenda part was to have a discussion among ourselves about some of the issues that you're facing at your local level related to the economic impact of COVID or whatever's going on. Are you having issues that would be helpful to share with each other related to non-payment of your utilities or childcare issues or public safety positions and so on and so forth? Amherst, can you start us off? Is anything going on in Amherst that would be good for this, just mentioning so that folks go aware of?
Sure, I'm never short of an opinion. Our biggest challenge is meeting that 30 December deadline and spending this money. I can honestly say we didn't need it. It's nice to have it. I tell my supervisors if we had any moral fiber at all, we'd send it back. But we need to, so it's knocking out several items on our capital improvement list and on our supplemental budget list. Just to give you, I have the list here in front of me of how we've allocated it. We've gotten, a chunk of it goes to the town, and we all have towns that we've given them their money. We've purchased an inflatable shelter for public safety. We have put hot water in some of our buildings that don't have it. This, because everything falls under the category of, hygiene, distance learning, or hygiene, teleworking, social distancing. We have the payroll piece for our public safety people, and we have the schools distance learning. And so, all of these, and then we have all the big grants programs that we're all entitled to do. So we've got money for that shelter, hot water in buildings that don't have hot water under the rubric of hygiene, our small business grants, nonprofit grants, individual grants. We are cleaning our ducts and putting in air disinfection systems in our buildings. A big chunk of it is going toward broadband for our for the teleworking and distance learning piece. We're buying laptops and other pieces of equipment that our staff can take home and that will work at home and here the same way. We have a lot of HVAC projects that are being taken care of in the interest of hygiene. We have talked about this in our luncheon meetings, the salary switch money, whereby you take your CARES Act money and apply it toward your public safety people from 1 March to 30 December. We call that the salary switch because while we pay that salary, that frees up the money we've already budgeted for salary, and that is now being set aside for major broadband projects past 30 December. We have given a chunk of money to our schools so that they can buy their PPE and their COVID-related expenses, with the condition that the $450,000 that we give them they will then apply toward a broadband project later on when we finish out the whole broadband plan. Then we have our own, our own PPE expenses and hand cleaner and all that kind of stuff. Public safety supplies and equipment. And we're even putting restrooms in the parks, again, under the rubric of hygiene. So that's where we've spent our money. And then, then we have the departments that come in late that have finally figured out, oh, well, other localities have purchased additional police vehicles. Now I want a couple of police vehicles. Okay, well, even though we've already allocated the money, we move it around and we find a way to make the sheriff happy. So, yeah, as I said, the challenge is finding a way to meet one of their 5 categories and be able to do it with a straight face. We run it by our accounting firm, Brown Edwards. We run it by the GFOA group that my finance director participates in. There's a lot of things we wanted to do but we just couldn't squeeze them into the right box, so we can't do it. And we continue to scramble to go way faster than a government ought to have to go to spend money properly, wisely, prudently.
Thank you.
Here's my 2 cents.
Amherst Town, any thoughts, Mayor? Always glad to have Sarah speak.
Yeah, I'm going to let Sarah speak.
Yes, sir. The town took advantage of the salary swap idea. So the majority of our CARES Act money is being taken up by a salary swap on our police department. The remainder was really just our direct costs for PPE and telework options. This has given us a lot more time to then be able to get out of, as Dean so correctly pointed out, that this having to run so much faster than we really reasonably can. So council has approved some of that money that we have from the salary swap to be able to go back and address HVAC concerns in town hall, as well as be able to go ahead and do a small business grant program, but not have that hard and fast deadline of December 1st, since so many localities have a hard time getting enough businesses to apply, as well as just several other things that we kind of had on the list that we wanted to do and didn't have good means to do it. They did also go back and reinstate some things from the original budget that had gotten cut. So we were able to do our full donations again, as well as take care of our staff salary increases. So the CARES Act money's been useful. The fact that we were able to do the salary swap took a lot of pressure off of us, and revenues are coming in higher than what we had projected. I did project a worst case scenario because I told council I would rather tell them we have more money instead of telling them we have less than what we projected. So it is coming in stronger than what we had thought. Restaurant takeout is really a lot stronger in town than what it started out as when this first came up. So we're looking reasonably good in town. It's, it's a tough time, but people are weathering it pretty well in the town. Anything you want to add?
No, ma'am. I think you covered that well.
Appomattox County and town, any issues you're dealing with in addition to CARES Act that are something to be shared by the group?
Yeah, no, I would just agree with Dean that the pressure of the deadline is significant. And I hate to take the easy way out on it, but some of this stuff we haven't voted on yet. It comes before us on Monday. So some of it I don't want to talk about, but it's just, I mean, pretty much every locality is spending on the same thing anyhow. And, we'd be using it for similar, expenditures. But it's certainly, we have ours in subcommittee for efficiency's sake, and then it'll come before the full board. But yeah, there has been certainly some issues with the time crunch, and specifically, talking about broadband and things like that. That's not easy to get those sort of things arranged in that ridiculously short amount of time.
Anybody else from the county or the town?
Gary, I'll let you handle it for the town, please.
Well, we've requested with the county that we might be reimbursed for the stimulus that we granted to all of our small businesses. It was around $43,000. That's it.
Thank you. Robert in Bedford, anything you're facing, dealing with that hadn't been covered by the others?
Not particularly. I echo pretty much all the points that have already been made, and we're doing a lot of similar projects. We're spending an awful lot of money on IT related items that are, for virtual meetings and virtual work, and some other CIP items that were somewhat related to that already. So that's been helpful for us, and we have all the same grant programs to nonprofits, businesses, individuals, working with the schools. Again, I echo the amount of time and energy, pain and suffering that administration and finance staff is having to deal with in terms of meeting this deadline is just is overwhelming a lot of days. There's a lot, quite frankly, there's a lot of other things in the county government that are not getting the attention they deserve due to CARES Act. And whether that's warranted or not is a whole nother debate. Probably the one thing, and it's on your list here to kind of, the one probably unmet need, or one thing that we still struggle with a little bit, and we haven't quite figured out how to crack this nut, is the topic of childcare. With the whole, with a number of businesses not quite being, fully functional, and particularly with schools being in a hybrid situation, where, you have parents working, but children may or may not be at school. We already had childcare challenges in Bedford County with a number of spaces that we have, and this has definitely exacerbated that. We've tried to look at a few different solutions, and it's not just giving money to childcare. I mean, the childcare providers are overrun, so that's not the problem. It's not having enough childcare providers. So we've been trying, and we haven't quite come up with a great program yet, but we've been trying to think of a way to leverage this whole opportunity to try to stimulate additional childcare provision within our community. Not only would it help during this time of need with coronavirus, but it would help down the road just for quality of life of our working families. So that is an area that we have some challenges in, and we haven't quite come up with the best solution yet.
Thank you. John, Frank, how about Campbell County? You facing anything that you haven't heard from the others?
I think our story is very similar. The board took a shot at its first plop of funds, doing business grants and county reimbursements for all the things we're talking about: HVAC improvements, technology things, costs incurred, PPE. We'll be talking about the second plop of funding at the October 6th board meeting, and taking a real hard look at the salary strategy we can implement to get out from under the December 30 timeline and give ourselves some more leeway to address some other needs. We do also have a good broadband project coming along as well. So nothing new there. Certainly sensitive in Campbell to the needs of the schools, and Mr. Hardy would know that more immediately than I, but in discussions with the superintendent, trying to make sure that going forward we're helping them. I think that's been one of the focal points of community impact here in Campbell as folks acclimate to the new way of doing education. And so we're trying to stay in communication with the schools, just see if there's anything we can do to support them outside of their existing resources. John, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to say on
that. No, thank you, Frank. I think you covered everything pretty well. That's a story in Campbell. So.
Thank you, Reed. Welcome again. And now that you've been on the job for a week, any perspectives from Lynchburg?
Yeah, sure. So we're finding very similar issues. Good thing is the city's really good at spending money, so we have that down pretty well. So the thing I'll just highlight is we put about $4 million of our money, our CARES money, into our business our small business grant program. And one of the things we're finding is that a lot of the small businesses actually are saying, we didn't really end up having a huge impact so far. So of the 1,100 or so folks that we sent applications to, we've got a few hundred applications, and so that's great. So we're going to probably open that up later on to some of the nonprofits in the community that are also going to be eligible. So we'll be able to spread that money around and learning as we go, as everybody else. So otherwise, similar other issues, and we're trying to be as creative as we possibly can.
Thank you. Megan, can you share any thoughts that the business community might be facing that we haven't heard around the table so far?
Yeah, Gary, thank you. And I've got to say, I think all of you know that we have the COVID business task force, and all of your economic developers have been participating on that and sharing the pros and cons and best practices regarding CARES money and supporting the business community. But everything has different hurdles, and right now the hurdle is childcare. We have a regularly scheduled childcare and education. We have a regularly scheduled weekly meeting with the schools and Centra, and we are meeting regularly with manufacturers and businesses. Childcare is the biggest hurdle right now for parents who are working and educating together. That seems to be the biggest thing. Manufacturers who can qualify for some of the funds that everybody's making available, all the way from the federal government down to the local. They are choosing not to take dollars for various reasons. But as for the time being, the questions are support for PPP if they need, or PPE if they need it, and then childcare and testing. Testing is always going to be up there, but I think everybody's hit it on the head. But right now, the thing everybody wants to talk about is childcare.
Well, thank you. And thanks everybody for going through this process. Ben Bowman has just joined us, and I'm glad to have you back with us, Ben. And I know he's working on a concept for one grant related to childcare. But there's bound to be plenty of opportunities and plenty of ways of approaching the various things we've heard today. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for letting us go through this process. We'll keep you posted as Ben's application gets moving forward.
This is Steve Trent. It's Thursday morning.
Okay, Gary, do we want to go back and address number 4?
We do have enough folks on the meeting, but it does require 12 votes in favor of this amendment, which would allow the chair to be reelected, succeed him or herself for a subsequent term, to change our bylaws in section Article 5. If there's any questions about this amendment, be glad to take any questions.
Hey Gary, what was the drive for that?
There was interest at the beginning of the spring for a change in the bylaws. No particular motivation or thing that initiated it. It was just suggested by some of the members that we take a look at this. All the other officers can succeed themselves except the chair.
Mr. Christie, may I add one point to that? When we talked about this originally, one of the concerns that we had was the fact that when you go to any of the statewide PDC meetings, so I mean the statewide organization, the leadership in that organization tends to be centered on elected officials who have been chair or in positions of leadership within their region for several years. Because we have a rotating chair, we don't really have any chairmen that plug in to those kinds of organizations for the long term. So I think one of the things we were concerned about is that we may be, as a region, underrepresented in our statewide organization because of the fact we have rotating leadership.
Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Are you
Well,
waving, Mr. Rogers, or are you just holding your hand up?
Well, I just clicked my
Oh, okay.
button. I'd like to hear Frank's opposition.
Thank you, Dean. I'm always pleased to present my opposition. Generally, I'm sort of tired of taking this role in these sort of groups, but I think it's a solution in search of a problem. I think Mr. Hardy has eloquently stated before that, you know, when you sign on to these committees, it makes sense for each jurisdiction to be represented as the chairman. Certainly, we've been well served by Mr. Tuggle, but I think it's appropriate for each locality to endorse this body by assuming some responsibility for leading it. And I think that rotating among the chairs is an appropriate way to reflect that endorsement and that shared responsibility. I just don't think it's been problematic enough that we need to make a bylaws change. So that's sort of where I'm at.
And I'll chime in with that as well, Dean, is just, you know, when I brought that to the surface or my concerns shared in meetings past with it as well, exactly as Frank had stated, but also, you know, I think Sarah makes a good point. However, you know, our leadership in every county is in constant flux. Our election cycles, our leaders, our representation, you know, on boards like this, a regional one, are going to change constantly anyway, because our board of supervisors or our, you know, city councils are going to change. Our town councils are going to change just through the election process as it stands. So I think it's going to be in a constant state of flux anyway. And again, I think it's best to have fair and equal representation, you know, for each county, each locality that has representation here on the board. I just don't see a need to change it. I think even some of the language after the edit still says that, you know, a chair, nobody can serve as chair until you've gone through a complete cycle again. So even the language is still a little messy in my opinion, but I'm just not in favor of it because I think we can handle equal representation.
Gary, is that true about the language? I mean, when I read that, it simply seemed to add the flexibility that if the next chair didn't want it and the past chair was willing to keep it another year, then we would have that flexibility. I mean, the rotation still continues. That wasn't removed. It was just somebody could stay if we wanted them to stay. And you know, having been forced into the treasurer position once, it's not like all of us can't handle any of these positions, but sometimes the timing can be really awkward with whatever else you've got going on. And it would be nice to be able to decline and then have the option to go either forward or backward.
Well, the way, excuse me, the way our bylaws read is if you do decline, you have to wait until the cycle goes around before you have another opportunity.
And the way I read that is just that the chair shall rotate on a one-year basis by governmental subdivision in alphabetical sequence until each governmental subdivision has had the opportunity of a commission board member to serve as chair before any governmental subdivision may again have representation in the chair. So by having a repeat or subsequent term, you're violating the second part of that statement. That's all I was saying, Dean, in my opinion. I might be wrong.
Well, can we change these shalls to mays?
You know, again, I just don't think it's I think everybody's capable of doing it. I don't see why dodge the responsibility.
Mr. Rogers, Mr. Dean Rogers, with your suggestion, I guess Gary would respond to that also.
Oh, change it to will, change the will to may.
Would that make a difference then?
No, I think the crux of the issue is, can the chair succeed himself, or should we stay with the rotation? That's really the core thing you're asked to consider.
Okay, well, if there is no more discussion, and since it has to be carried by 12 votes, I guess we'll still put it on the floor, and then we pretty much know where we stand. So I'll take a motion to accept the amendments that Mr. Christie had presented.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Carter. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
I have a second from Mr. Dean Rogers. Okay, those opposed, please do it one at a time so we can get a count. I know two. Is it Mr. Rogers and Mr. Hardy? Is there any others that are opposed?
No.
No.
Mr. Connor, Mr. Schenneberger, Mr. Hiss, everybody but three people. So with that.
Mr. Chairman, if you're not going to do an individual vote, I would concur with Mr. Rogers and with Frank Rogers and Mr. Hardy. I don't really see where it's broken. Sometimes we get people in those positions and nobody wants to hurt their feelings, so by default they continue to remain in that position. And it just seems to be working well the way it's working, and it is very there's a fluctuation, like you said, in leadership. So I would concur with leave it like it is.
Okay. So with that, motion is failed. So moving on, Miss Hitchcock, it's your turn.
Hi, thank you. Just wanted to give a quick overview. Amherst County applied in partnership with Lynchburg City, the PDC, and the James River Association to receive technical assistance from the National Park Service Rivers and Trails Conservation Assistance Program. And that program, it's a national program, and it's in the way of technical assistance, but that technical assistance is in the form of a planner or planners to help you develop a project. And it is a shout out to Amherst County. It was one of the top rated applications that was submitted in the East Coast region. And so that project, it'll be about a year to possibly 2 years to develop a vision for the James River that's defined basically from Scotts Mill. I'm sorry? Okay. From Scotts Mill to the Amherst County line. And the primary components of the vision is to create, look at outdoor recreation, sort of leveraging the waterfront, look at water trail opportunities, trail use management, and then conservation. And really, this project is a way to have everyone look at the James River and the opportunities where it's not Amherst County just looking at from one vantage point, or the city looking at one vantage point, and how can we leverage that collective resource. It's also a direct response from the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And we're just starting off. We have a kickoff, we'll have a brand, and we'll look forward to bringing more information with you, developing this project, and really we'll move through stakeholder opportunities that will be in the beginning of the year, January, February 21. Public outreach will be into the spring, and with a preliminary plan in August of 2021, and the National Park Service has alluded to us, and Dean will chime in whatever I've missed here, that this project ranks so highly that they've alluded they will give a second year of technical assistance for another 300 hours of planning and landscape architects. So, Dean, if I've missed anything, we're at the jumping off point.
So with that being said, we haven't had any stakeholder representation from Campbell or Appomattox. And it would be good, Frank, if you wanted to think about somebody, one of your planners, to jump in on, we're talking about access points and other uses on both sides of the river from Scotts Mill Dam south. So anybody who's got an interest in that is invited to participate. The ulterior motive is to build a vision that we can talk about, hand around, and it has public support before we bring it to the political bodies with some ideas on how we want to implement it.
And Frank, I just want to follow up for all the localities, Bedford, everyone, we are developing our stakeholder list. And we'll have focus group meetings. Some of those will be directed towards, your public works and those sort of, so all the stakeholders, users, trail users. So we'll have a very comprehensive process that we'll be reaching out. And just so you know, the kind of the core team is Rachel Friesheisen from the city of Lynchburg, myself, Rob Campbell from James River Association, Dean, Jeremy Bryant, and Sarah Lou, and then the 2 National Park Service, which was another thing. Again, they told us it was, again, one of the top rated applications that went in through the National Park Service East Coast branch, and they provided us 2 planners for this project and access to an additional landscape architect. So again, I think it's in no small part to the work that we talked about that Megan and the Alliance are doing with the training school, and so we look forward to bringing a lot forward.
I think it's isn't it called? Didn't we decide on a name finally that it's the James River Vision Plan, a splashing vision for the Middle James? And
we'll have a website, and we're working on the brand and all that. So
I think it was good strategy to go with such a short, pithy name, Dean. But would absolutely love to have somebody from Campbell at the table. So please keep me posted about upcoming dates.
Please feel free to include
splashing in the water, making Amherst prosper along the riverfront in canoes before Whitewater Rapids plan.
I have a visual of Dean splashing across the river.
Your Parks and Rec person too, in addition to a planner and anything else, anybody else you think would be helpful.
Absolutely, appreciate it.
And I'll just end with this, that our next meeting is collating our stakeholder and our focus groups. And then, so we'll be sending that out to all the localities so you can look at those focus groups and sort of the initial component of creating that preliminary information. And then we'll move to the public side in 2021. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kelly. Next, back to you, Mr. Christie, on the PDC dues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We typically talk about dues in the fall in order to make sure that localities have plenty of time to give them a number for their budget. Our number hasn't changed for many years in terms of our dues. Counties and the city pays 57.5 cents per capita. That changes as population changes. And the towns pay a flat fee of $1,045 annually. We took some ideas to the to the executive committee One was a 5-cent increase, and another was a cost of living increase. The cost of living as of September 2019 increased by 1.7% from the previous year. And the executive committee came to the conclusion to bring to you a dues increase based on the cost of living for that period of time of from 57.5 to 58.5 cents. It would be a 1 penny increase for the new year, and proportionally for towns to go up to $1,063. And so we asked that would generate about 2,656 new dollars for the organization. We use our dues to match grants. About 50% of it is used for matching transportation grants, and the rest of it goes to operations that allows us to do things that are not billable to other organizations. So based on the executive committee recommendation, we bring you a proposal to increase by 1 penny and a slight increase in the town's dues for the year beginning July 1st, 2021. Happy to answer any questions you might have about this request.
Okay, if there's no questions, Mr. Christie.
I've got a question, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So yes, question, Mr. Christie. So with the billing structure, just it's new for me to look at. So question with it, the towns, the flat fee, can you explain that? Because it almost seems like a double charge where, you know, your population for a county is already being counted, and then there's a fee on top of it for the towns. So while I'm in agreement with the towns being a member, but I'm kind of wondering, why is it a double charge in a locality?
It's been that way since 1990 when towns were brought into the PDC. And I think it was that way in order to allow some cost for a seat at the table, that the towns have a little bit of skin in the game to pay something, recognizing that counties are paying the entire per capita bill for the towns. It is optional for towns to be members of the PDC. For example, town of Pamplin in Appomattox County does not belong to the PDC. They don't pay the dues and so forth. So I've always looked at it as a charge for a seat at the table.
Mr. Hardy, you have anything further you want to add?
No, that's it. Just a charge to be a member.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything? Okay, if not, we need a motion on this, Mr. Christie.
Yes, sir, you would.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the dues increase.
I'll move approval.
Try it again. I didn't see who it was.
Reed, I'll move approval.
Thank you, Reed. May I have a second, please? A second from Mayor Connor. All those opposed, raise your hand so I can see. There being none, motion carried unanimously. Next item on the agenda is back to you, Mr. Christie. It's a resolution for Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott Smith has been with us for over 14 years and has worked in a variety of areas, all of the communities, and is leaving to support his wife as she goes adventuring into Missouri academics. I have a resolution here for you to approve as a thank you gift to him for his work for all of us, and to say share our appreciation.
Okay, I will entertain a motion for the resolution for Scott Smith.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Megan. May I have a second, please? A second from Mr. Hardy. All those, let's just say all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wave your hands. That's all for you, Mr. Smith. We're all waving our hands. All right, motion carried. Next item is the slate of officers for the 2021 year. Mr. Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have Mayor Richard Connor as our proposed chair, John Sharp from Bedford County as the vice chair, Gary Schanenberger as treasurer, and myself as secretary. It would be appropriate to take any other nominations before we.
Okay, is there any other nominations from the floor other than the slate presented? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept the slate of officers that is presented for the 2021.
So moved.
That was Megan. Okay, may I have a second, please?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Hardy. All right, all those opposed? There being none, the slate of officers for 2021 is set. Congratulations, gentlemen.
Congratulations indeed. And I would just remind you that we'd have done a resolution of appreciation to Mayor Tuggle for his work over the past year. And we'll present that at a future town council meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, final item. Is there any comments from staff or commission members?
Go ahead, Megan.
Go ahead, Megan.
I just want to give a brief update on the training center. The training center target advisory group has been meeting. There'll be tentatively, there's a press conference scheduled for October 1st at 11 o'clock. A save the date probably will go out next week. We've just got to tie up some ends on that. But much like what the process Kelly just told you about for the river, it's the same process with the training center. We're in the data collection phase. We've established a brand and image for the redevelopment plan. On October 1st, we'll launch the website at the press conference, as well as launch the request for public input. And so we're all rowing the boat down the river together, and that's just moving along really, really nicely. The project is slated for completion in early 2021. And we'll be referring to it instead of the CVTC redevelopment plan, it's the training center. So the training center redevelopment plan. And if you have questions or want more details, please don't hesitate to give me a buzz. Gary, I don't know if at the next meeting you want a full briefing on where it's at, but I'll leave that to you. But it is moving along well, and I appreciate everybody's involvement, and it is not without its challenges.
Thank you, Megan. Anybody else have anything?
Just a couple of things.
This is Frank. I just want to kick back to the Scott Smith resolution, just offer my own thanks on behalf of Campbell County, Scott, for all your work. It's always been a pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Hear, hear.
A couple of things from staff that you ought to know about. We do keep up with the new COVID-19 cases in the region for each of our jurisdictions, and that's on our website on a chart updated on a regular basis. So you can see a line of how those COVID cases are doing. Also, start thinking about items for the General Assembly that you'd like to present to the region for a regional legislative agenda packet. We'll start considering that at our future meetings in October and perhaps in November. So take it back to your jurisdiction for items that you want to take for the region to support for General Assembly items. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have another thing. I'm sorry, y'all.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if everybody noticed, but Stan Goldsmith passed away, and he certainly had, was engaged with Region 2000 for a very long time and was a leader in Campbell County and Alta Vista. And I was really saddened to see that, but he was part of your people. He was your tribe for a while. So if you didn't know that, Stan passed away, and I think that's unfortunate, but our thoughts are with Kyle and the family.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, nothing else. Then next meeting will be October 15th at 5 p.m. With that in mind, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Also
We got a
moved.
couple there. Gary, Mr. Shannonberger, have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Hardy, second. All those that do not want to go home, say something. All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Have a
Thank
good night.
you.